Hello, BookTube. Welcome to Jack's Reading Corner. I am Jack, and this is a continuation of the video I just filmed where I talked about the classics I read in school, at least the ones I remember, because I'm sure I've read plenty other ones. But I'm going to talk about the classics that I read beyond school that I really liked. And now that there's no pressure to study them and to analyze them and to pick the symbolism and all the, all the important literary stuff, I can now enjoy classics for just being a story. And I know which classics I like, which classics I enjoy, and which classics I don't like. So I've definitely focused more on them, especially in the past 2 years. I read The Great Gatsby the first time for school, but then I read it again around the time we moved here, and I still loved it. And I remember the symbolism and stuff that we talked about in high school. But I like that I can read it without having to think about that kind of stuff. And I could just enjoy the story. And then, I did mention in that video that I read A Tale of Two Cities for class. And that's when I want to read again. So at some point, because after reading that, I've just been more intrigued by Dickens. So I've started collecting his novels. I have a big bind up, the Barnes and Noble editions, those big fancy bind ups of their certain authors' novels. That it kind of looks like an old-fashioned book. So I have that, but then now I've collected some of his other works in paperback format because that's easier to read. And then now, in that video, I did mention that I'm not big on reading war books that take place on the battlefield. Oh, speaking of, another book I read for school that was a war book, or for college, was The Things They Carried, and that, to me, I get it that, what they carried kind of is talking about their lives a little bit and exploring these characters and getting character development. Oh, that was the other thing I meant to say about Catcher in the Rye. I felt like there was very little character development with Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye. But anyway, back to the war book thing. So I also, but to me, The Things They Carry was just kind of boring. Not a lot, nothing really happened except for these guys were walking. But I made an exception because it was a short book, a short novel, and read The Red Badge of Courage. Again, another one that I just did not like. I read it though because it was oh, well, it's not that long of a book, and, I'm trying to decide, well, maybe I need to find the right war book. But so far, I don't like war books that take place on the battlefield. I prefer the war books where you learn about the women's lives and the people that got left behind and the political intrigue stuff of war. And then, so that one, but it was a quick book. Now, To Kill a Mockingbird I read when I was a little kid, and I think that was a mistake. And I could easily check it out from the library because I think I've seen it there. But right now, I'm just not interested. And maybe one day I will be, but really? Really, Rascal? What, you're gonna wait? So maybe someday I'll read it. I don't know, and then I also kind of put Charlotte's Web on this list because I feel like it's considered a children's classic. Because I read that years ago. I only remember the movie the best. But, and the movie makes me cry. But I was just reminded recently that the book and the movie are different. So I need to reread, but I don't have the book, so I need to get it from the library. And one I just read this year, my first Russian classic, and that is Crime and Punishment. I absolutely loved that novel. It was such an intriguing, fascinating story about a guy who's contemplating committing a crime because he's in debt. He's in financial dire straits, so he needs money. So he decides to kill a pawnbroker, a female pawnbroker, and it's all about him dealing with that. And he has personal family issues as well, like his daughter's caught between two men who are kind of assholes. His sister is, and oh my god, can't you just stay in the Dagon room? The downside of keeping my door closed is the dogs. But that was such a good book. It's not super long. It's not too long. It's long. It's a chunky book. It's over 500 pages, I think. But it's compared to some of the books that I'm like. Another one I'm gonna mention on here. And then I also read Farewell to Arms because my aunt Wendy, my dad's younger sister, was talking about how Hemingway reminds her of my dad, and I just could not. Like, I was able to read it because it was a quick read, and the writing style allowed it to be fast, like a quick read, but the romance was just, I couldn't get past the romance. I couldn't get into it. She was so submissive, the woman, and of course, my aunt did make a good argument that, considering, remember, it's the time period and everything, but then other people, that was their criticisms as well, that the female was so boring and submissive. Like, yes, darling, and oh my god, how many times was the word darling was used? You know, if the person I love, if he calls me some endearment, fine, but, like, some of them are just, like, make me cringe, like darling. I don't like darling. And she was still like, yes, sir, or if it will make you happy, honey. It's like, you're your own person. I just couldn't get into it, but I do want to consider some of his other stuff, his other books, just to. And then I also read some George Orwell in 2017. I read his two books, 2018, I think. Fair Animal Farm. I definitely prefer that one over the other one, which is 1984. 1984 was just, I mean, I know there was a reason that it was the way it was, but it was kind of boring. And although it was kind of scary too at the same time. It was like dull and scary to think that could life get to that point. And then there was one part where basically the main character was reading a text from a book, and that whole section of the novel itself was the excerpt from the text that he read. And it's like, okay, you didn't need to do that. You did not need to include that. But I guess the author George Orwell did that because he was trying to explain the society and the way this world ran and worked and everything, and that's why I included it. Like very tell, not show. I couldn't stand that. I did love Animal Farm though, which was a political satire on communism and why it does not work. And it was very much, but again, like a mouse, it was told through animals. And my edition looks like a children's book. One of those big ones. It was such, good, interesting story. And I was, part of me was rooting for things to work out for the animals. But then I knew that realistically the book was not going to end happy. Although one of the movie versions does end happy. Oh, I guess I put Fahrenheit 451 because I reread it last year. And I reread Catcher in the Rye last year as well. And that's when I decided Catcher in the Rye is not the book for me. Fahrenheit 451, I still enjoyed it, but I did donate it to the bookstore. I read The Hobbit a few years ago, around the time that the movies came out, like right before the movies came out. And I like the movies and the book. I don't get why people have such hate for it. It's like, I think it's mostly because of Peter Jackson adding so much, which was in the appendices. Dang it! It was like that stuff. I mean, maybe not. I mean, okay, I really shouldn't get that up because I could be wrong, but I think I heard that the stuff he added was in the appendices. And I guess I can't really judge his, Tolkien's grandson or great grandson. Like, it's their relative's work, so of course they have a right to be a little like, I don't like this. But you have to please a universal audience. You can't just please the hardcore fans that love the book. You have to, when it comes to movies, I feel like you have to please more than just the original fans that love the book, because a movie is going for multiple people. Like, not just the original fans. They want other fans to love it too. So I liked both, and I don't, I think people are a little bit too harsh. And before I forget, the other book that I've been reading that I kind of hinted at after talking about Crime and Punishment is Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I did have The Three Musketeers, but then after hearing about it from Rincey Reads, I was like, I don't know if I could really get into this. I mean, I would rather just watch a movie, watch a movie or TV show versions of it. I mean, I'm sure it's a great book. It just, at the time, it just didn't feel like my kind of classic. Which is kind of funny. But, I don't know, I wasn't feeling it. But I have been feeling, Count of Monte Cristo. I'm really liking that one. Like, I love political intrigue stories. Historical politics. Which, I did not mention this in the buzzwords tag. But I think one of the things that gets my attention buzzwords wise is like political intrigue, but not today's politics. I lived today's politics. I don't want to read about today's politics, but I like historical politics. So I do need to get back into that one, but I don't think I'm going to get that one done for the Curse. That's a long, chunky book, and I'm reading several other books right now. Now, these next two, I don't know if they're, I think it depends. Like, some of these, at least four of these, I don't know if they're considered classics or not. But I've debated with people about that before, and their argument didn't make sense on why they would be considered classics. But his Dark Materials, or at least I think it will be considered a classic in the future. His Dark Materials, I've read those books, wasn't a big fan of them. I liked them at first, but maybe it's partly because I spaced out my reading in between each of the books, and maybe I just lost interest and felt more the pressure to read them, rather than because I wanted to read them. It was pretty good, though. I mean, it did get kind of weird towards the end. And then Harry Potter, I don't know if that's considered classics today or not. I guess it is. Like a classic of the 90s. Or what we would consider classics today. But I read the Harry Potter, and there's no point in me telling what that's about because everybody knows that. Most people know what that's about. The other ones are Murder on the Orient Express, a 20th century classic. Like, I guess a modern classic. I read that one, and I've started to slowly read, I think I've read 3 or 4 of Agatha Christie's books. And I recently bought another one first, and I almost bought another one the other day, but then I was like, I was more interested in buying the 2 hardback R.A. Salvatore books. So I was like, I'll save that one, because that one was also hardback. An Interview with the Vampire. I don't know if Anne Rice's books, her vampire books, or her witch books, or any of the other books that she writes, if they're considered classics or not. But it reminds me very much of Dracula, but a little bit more interesting. And then I read Les Mis. Did not like that one. I remember at the time I thought it was kind of boring. Like, the musical's more interesting. But, I should buy it. One day I should buy it again and reread it again, but I don't know. And then, I don't know, I think this will be considered a modern classic, but The Alchemist, which is another quick read about this Spanish boy who he wants to become an alchemist. So he goes on a journey to find a real alchemist to learn and be about alchemy and become his apprentice. It's actually a good book. It's very entertaining. It's a very quick read. And of course, I read Dracula. Like Les Mis, I thought that was kind of boring, not as interesting as the movies were. And then, as far as my Austen works go, I read Pride and Prejudice, which I'm due for a reread. Sense and Sensibility, not my favorite, but I did like it. Persuasion, I liked Persuasion the least. And I'm sorry, but I feel like I'm missing someone with Jane Austen because all her books, I get that they're funny and they provide a little funny commentary on the world she's from, that she grew up in, but all these characters do is talk, sort out their feelings, find love, and then talk some more and take walks. Not all that happens in her books. I mean, I guess the most exciting things are the conversations the characters have. That's where the excitement comes in. But who knows? I think the way Olive talked about Mansfield Park, who knows? I might like that one more. That one might be my favorite. So I need to read Lady Susan, which is really quick because it's a bunch of little letters exchanged between Lady Susan and other people. And then I need to read Mansfield Park. And I think there's one more. I don't know. I have to check. Because that's another one where I have the Barnes & Noble Collector's Edition of all 7 of her novels. And then North and South, I finally finished that book. I ended up donating that one, but I prefer that over Pride and Prejudice. And when Murphy Napier, I actually recommended that book to her when she was doing a video on the romance novels that she's read. She's not a big fan of romance novels, but she asked for recommendations, and I don't know if she's gonna love it, but I definitely recommended that one because she loved Pride and Prejudice, and it reminds me very much of Pride and Prejudice. It's just set during the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution, the Industrial Age. So I definitely like those, and I like the two characters. I don't know if I like them more or not, but I like that plot more than the other one. Although Steve Donahue pointed out some things about that plot when he was doing a read-along of it that made it more interesting and made me feel like I'm missing something. And then another classic I read, that's North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Not North and South by Jonathan Jakes, but North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. And then, of course, Jane Eyre. I read that when I was 16, and then I read it again a few years ago. A couple years ago. And I just loved it. And then I ended up giving it to my cousin. The first time she came to see us at this house, I gave that one to her. And then the other Dickens book that I have read is A Christmas Carol. But I am so familiar with that story because I've seen so many adaptations of it on the screen, and I've seen the play version, so it's like nothing about that story was surprising. Like, I knew it was going to happen. I know the famous lines, and it's just, so it's hard to really have an opinion on it without it being colored by the on-screen versions that I've seen. But I did like it. And then I remembered I also read Diary of a Young Girl when I was a kid. And that's also around the time I first read To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh wait, I already mentioned To Kill a Mockingbird, I forgot. So I think Diary of a Young Girl, Diary of Anne Frank, I think I read it around the same time. It's this tragically beautiful story. And stories like that, it's like part of you feels like you should reread them, but then a party's like, I know what happened. Because some of these classics you hear so much about that you don't even have to reread them again because you know the plot already because you've heard about it so many times. But, so those are the classics, at least the ones that come to my mind right now that I've read. And then as far as classics I have that I still need to read, I'm slowly collecting like Russian classics like Anna Karenina, War and Peace. Not the Brothers Karamazov, but one of Dostoevsky's other works. And then The Handmaid's Tale, I got that one. Let's see, what are some of the other classics? Middlemarch. Great Expectations, Bleak House. I have a lot. So I'm slowly working my way through my classics. Like I said, I'm currently reading Count of Monte Cristo, which that's another book that's over 1,000 pages long. So, but I have so much, like I said in that other video, or I think I said, because I said a lot in that video, but I don't remember. It was very rambly. My video where I talked about classics and their importance to me and to the world. That I don't know. I'm all of a sudden tiredness just came over me while I was talking to you guys. While I was listing this stuff. But yeah, I definitely want to read more I'm still continuously trying to read more and more classics. And there's some I want to reread again. Like I want to reread The Great Gatsby for the third time, and I want to reread A Tale of Two Cities. But as like Haley from Bookland, she just talked about this, how she always feels guilty when she does rereads because there's so many new books and so many books that she wants to get to, so she feels guilty about doing rereads. And sometimes I kind of feel that too. Sometimes I feel like, okay, I need to get to the other books that I have instead of wasting time. Well, not that it's a waste of time, but instead of taking the time to reread a book I've already read once. But there's nothing wrong with rereads. Rereads are fun, and I have heard, because I've never really felt a slump by spine. I never found myself in a slump before. I mean, there are times when after I finish the book that I'm feeling like, okay, I need to take a step back, but they usually last like maybe 24 hours or a few hours before I could start a new book. I mean, a lot of people, so maybe that's a slump, because people say slumps are unavoidable. So maybe that's a slump for me, but, like I've never not felt the urge to not read or not desired to read some kind of novel. But what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was going to say. As you can tell, I'm tired, and I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh, I forgot I've also read Peter Pan. That's another children's classic. I also went to and Wizard of Oz. I cannot believe I forgot all three of those, because they are the most famous, next to Charlotte's Web, they are the most famous children's classics. And I've read all three of them, and I've set them all aside, because I want, when Harrison and Daniel are old enough, because right now one is going to be 2 this year, and then the other one is going to be 4, so I feel like we need to read a few more, especially because they're not picture books. Well, although Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz, the editions I have do have drawings in them, but they're novels. They're not short, so I'm gonna wait a few years. And the same thing with The Hobbit. The Hobbit was originally meant for kids. That's why it's so much easier to read than the original trilogy. But yeah, I cannot believe I forgot those. But I love, those are some of my favorites. Although I definitely prefer Wizard of Oz over Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I need to reread that one. I like Peter Pan as well, but again, I prefer Wizard of Oz. So, again, just as I said in the previous video, I would love to know what classics you read, if you read any, or if, at least if you had to read them in school, and if you like them or not. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't already and you like this video. And whether you're reading classic or not, I would love to know what you're reading either way. So feel free to share in the comments below. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!